The private jet cabin was quiet and elegant, filled with soft golden lights and expensive leather seats, as powerful businessman Victor Hale calmly sipped tea. Across from him, a tired maid in a simple uniform had fallen deeply asleep in one of the luxury seats, her head leaning to the side after a long, exhausting day. Victor slowly lowered his teacup, staring at the sleeping maid with clear irritation, wondering how someone like her even stepped inside a jet meant for billionaires. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments what time is it and where are you watching from. Let's start. The maid looked completely unaware of the tension around her, her tired face showing the weight of endless work and sleepless nights. Victor's sharp eyes scanned her worn shoes and simple clothes, silently judging her presence as if she had broken some invisible rule. Behind them, the flight attendant suddenly froze in shock, realizing something was terribly wrong about the passenger list on this flight. His hand slowly covered his mouth, eyes wide with disbelief, as he checked the manifest again and again, unable to believe what he was seeing. Victor noticed the man's strange reaction and frowned, assuming the crew had made some careless mistake allowing a maid into his jet. The billionaire leaned forward slightly, his voice cold and firm, as he asked the attendant how such an embarrassing error could happen. The sleeping maid shifted slightly in her seat, still unaware that her quiet mistake had already started a storm inside this luxurious plane, and none of them yet realized that the tired woman sleeping peacefully was hiding a truth powerful enough to shake Victor's pride forever. Victor placed his teacup down slowly, his sharp gaze fixed on the sleeping maid as irritation slowly grew inside his chest. To him, this jet represented power, success, and control, and seeing a tired maid resting there felt like an insult to his world. The flight attendant nervously checked the passenger tablet again, sweat forming on his forehead as confusion spread across his face. Victor's voice turned colder as he asked again how a cleaning maid could possibly enter a private jet meant only for elite guests. The attendant tried to explain that the boarding process had been rushed and someone might have walked through the wrong terminal gate. Victor let out a quiet scoff, clearly unimpressed, his pride wounded by what he saw as careless management and disrespect. Meanwhile, the maid remained asleep, her tired hands folded in her lap, breathing slowly like someone who had worked far too long. Her shoes were dusty, her uniform slightly wrinkled, clear signs of a long, exhausting shift that had probably started before sunrise. Victor stared at her again, his mind already forming harsh judgments about people who he believed did not belong in his world. Behind them, the attendant whispered into his headset, asking ground control to urgently verify the identity of the unexpected passenger. But the deeper he checked the system, the more confused he became, because the name attached to that seat made no sense at all. And in that moment, while the maid slept peacefully, a quiet truth was slowly moving closer to turning Victor's arrogance into regret. The jet continued flying through the quiet evening sky, its engines humming softly, while tension slowly filled the luxurious cabin. Victor leaned back in his seat, still staring at the sleeping maid, clearly annoyed that the situation had not yet been fixed. To him, it was a simple matter of status, and the presence of a maid in his private jet felt like a mistake that needed correction. The flight attendant walked closer again, his face pale and uneasy, holding the passenger tablet like it carried troubling news. Victor immediately asked if the mistake had been solved, expecting the maid to be escorted out as soon as the plane landed. The attendant hesitated for a moment before quietly saying the passenger identity connected to that seat was still being verified. Victor frowned deeply, clearly losing patience, his fingers tapping the armrest as his pride pushed him toward harsher reactions. He said that rules existed for a reason, and people who entered the wrong place needed to be reminded where they belonged. The sleeping maid slowly shifted again, exhaustion still keeping her deeply asleep, unaware of the growing storm around her. The attendant glanced at her again with a strange expression, as if he was trying to connect two completely different realities. Victor then muttered something under his breath about discipline and respect, believing someone like her needed a lesson. But only minutes later, a message from ground control arrived that would soon make Victor wish he had chosen his words far more carefully. His eyes widened slowly as he read the information again, then again, struggling to accept what the system was clearly showing. Victor noticed the strange silence and demanded to know what was taking so long to remove the wrong passenger from his jet. The attendant looked up nervously but hesitated to speak, because the name attached to that sleeping maid made no sense at all. Victor's patience snapped as he stood halfway from his seat, saying this embarrassment was unacceptable for someone of his status. The maid slowly stirred at the sound of raised voices, her eyes opening slightly as confusion crossed her tired face. She looked around the luxurious cabin, clearly realizing she had boarded the wrong plane after a long, exhausting shift. Victor gave a cold laugh and sarcastically asked if she enjoyed resting in places meant for people far above her position. The maid lowered her eyes quietly, embarrassed and confused, softly apologizing for the mistake she clearly never intended. The attendant swallowed nervously, knowing something important had not yet been said that could change everything in seconds. Victor waved his hand dismissively, telling the crew to make sure this kind of careless error never happened again. But the attendant finally spoke, his voice shaking slightly, saying the system confirmed that the sleeping maid owned the jet they were flying in. For a moment, the entire cabin fell into complete silence as Victor slowly turned his head toward the attendant, unsure he heard correctly. The attendant nervously repeated the message from ground control, confirming that the aircraft was registered under the maid's name. Victor's confident expression began to fade as disbelief slowly replaced the pride that had filled his face moments earlier. The maid blinked several times, still waking from exhaustion, clearly confused about why everyone in the cabin was staring at her. Victor forced a small laugh, assuming this must be some kind of technical error or ridiculous misunderstanding in the system. But the attendant carefully turned the tablet toward him, showing the official aircraft registry linked to the quiet woman's identity. Victor leaned closer, reading the name again and again, feeling a strange heaviness growing in his chest with every second. The maid gently rubbed her eyes, then softly asked the attendant if the jet had already taken off from the wrong terminal. Her calm voice carried no arrogance, only simple confusion from someone who had boarded after a long, exhausting workday. Victor studied her face again, this time noticing something he had ignored before, a quiet confidence hidden beneath her tired look. The attendant then revealed that the woman was listed as the majority owner of several international logistics companies. And in that moment, Victor realized the exhausted maid he had just humiliated might actually be far more powerful than he ever imagined. Victor slowly leaned back into his seat, the confidence that once filled his posture now replaced by a strange and uncomfortable silence. His eyes moved again toward the woman he had mocked minutes ago, now realizing the story he believed might not be true at all. The maid quietly fixed the sleeve of her uniform, still unaware of the storm of realization slowly forming inside Victor's mind. The attendant cleared his throat gently and spoke again, confirming that the aircraft belonged to a private holding company under her control. Victor felt a sharp wave of disbelief wash over him because the calm, tired woman before him looked nothing like a powerful owner. The maid then apologized once more for boarding the wrong plane, explaining she had rushed from work and followed the wrong gate. Her voice was simple and sincere, carrying no sign that she owned jets or companies worth millions across several countries. Victor watched her carefully now, noticing the quiet dignity in her eyes that he had ignored when pride blinded his judgment. The attendant then added another detail, saying the woman often traveled without revealing her identity to avoid attention. Victor's stomach tightened as every harsh word he had spoken minutes earlier echoed loudly inside his mind. The maid slowly looked toward Victor with a small, polite smile, unaware that he had been the one judging her moments ago. And for the first time in many years, Victor Hale felt something unfamiliar rising in his chest, the heavy feeling of regret. Victor's hands slowly tightened on the armrest as the weight of his earlier words returned to his mind like an echo he could not silence. Every cold remark he had made now felt heavier, as if the quiet cabin itself was reminding him how quickly pride can blind judgment. Across the aisle, the woman calmly adjusted the blanket the attendant had brought her, still carrying the gentle manners of someone humble. She thanked the crew softly for their help, her voice warm and respectful, completely unaware of the humiliation Victor had caused. Victor watched her carefully now, noticing the patience and quiet strength that did not match the harsh assumptions he made earlier. The attendant then explained that she had started her journey years ago as a real maid while supporting her younger siblings. Victor's eyes widened slightly as he realized the uniform she wore was not a disguise, but part of the life she still respected. She had built her companies slowly, step by step, refusing to forget the work that once helped her family survive difficult days. Victor lowered his gaze for a moment, the truth slowly breaking through the wall of pride that had shaped his life for decades. The woman then noticed his silence and politely asked if everything was all right, her kindness making his guilt grow even deeper. Victor opened his mouth to respond, but the words felt heavy, trapped between embarrassment and the need to correct his mistake. And in that quiet moment, the powerful billionaire realized the greatest test of his character had only just begun. Victor finally stood up slowly, the pride that once guided his words now replaced by a deep sense of responsibility and quiet humility. He walked toward the woman carefully, knowing that the apology he was about to offer carried more weight than any business deal he had ever made. The cabin remained silent as the attendants watched, sensing that this moment was about more than status, wealth, or power. Victor lowered his head slightly and admitted that he had judged her unfairly the moment he saw her uniform and tired appearance. He confessed that years of success had slowly made him forget that dignity and worth are not measured by clothing or title. The woman listened quietly, her calm eyes showing no anger, only the patience of someone who had already faced many struggles in life. She gently explained that mistakes happen when people only see what is on the surface, instead of understanding someone's full story. Victor nodded slowly, realizing that her words carried a lesson far greater than the humiliation he had caused earlier. The attendants relaxed as the tension finally faded, the heavy silence inside the cabin slowly turning into a moment of reflection. Victor promised himself that he would never again judge someone's value based only on the role they seemed to play. The woman smiled kindly and told him that true strength is not about power, but about learning when pride needs to step aside. Some stories leave a mark forever, like the video. Subscribe now and be here for the next unforgettable experience.